Welcome to Wow, or Women of Worth. I'm Michelle Martin. It is such a privilege to have three wonderful guests with me in the studio. Have you ever been on the receiving end of what felt like someone operating and treating you as if you were a one-dimensional person, not quite a person with various attributes and, incredible diverse motivations, but somebody who's looking at you through a lens that assumed a certain cluster of attributes or adjectives associated with you? Well, if so, then you know what it feels like to be the receiving end of a stereotype. I really wanted to do this show because I think it's important. If we think about living in a world that is free of violence, I think it starts really by asking some basic questions about how we see each other and to what extent our view of each other is colored by stereotypes that we may have. And this might be all sorts of assumptions attached to groups, whether it's to do with ethnicity or occupation or nationality or even gender. And I think if we look at the roots of violence and we want to make some change happen there, we have to start several layers down and ask ourselves about the stereotypes. And so in Singapore, what are some of the stereotypes that Singaporean women could be experiencing? I have with me Anung Hartati. She is a writer from Indonesia. She's been in Singapore for 15 years working as a domestic worker. She's won many writing competitions, published a book even, and she is a volunteer at home where she assists other domestic workers from Indonesia cope with an experience that can feel so alienating, and something that she's experienced herself having worked for 15 years. And she's here with the support of a wonderful employer who is really in line with her being an advocate for domestic workers in Singapore, right, Anung?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Terrific to have you with us. Thank you very much for being here.
Yes, I'm also very grateful to in here, and thanks to Kokila and Away and Home to give me this opportunity to join a lot activity to support domestic worker.
Yeah, we can't wait to hear your story. And in case you're wondering who Kokila is, that would be Kokila Annamalai, who is the campaign manager from Aware. She heads the Singapore chapter of We Can. That is a global movement to end gender-based violence. Kokila, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. In your opinion, what do you think? Can you explain stereotype to our audience?
Well, I think that, one way to look at stereotypes are that they're a way of judging a person in a way that it can be really damaging and make assumptions about them as an individual because of certain identity markers, right? So some that are most apparent when looking at people are their gender often, or at least assumptions are made about someone's gender from their appearance, ethnicity, and often we make a lot of assumptions about people based on their appearance or based on certain other identity markers that then work to restrict how we think about them, but to limit how much we the opportunities that they have in society, and can lead to violence in the case of gender stereotypes or even racial stereotypes. I mean, we've all been following Ferguson and what's been happening in the US because of the stereotypes that the black community suffers in terms of racial profiling and the assumptions are made about people all the time that then leads to damage and oppression in their lives. And I think that's where stereotypes can be at their most violent.
And in Singapore, does the term woman come with a whole host of stereotypes attached to that? I think the person best placed to answer that would be my third guest joining us this evening, a third-year undergraduate, Nicole Lawrence. Welcome, Nicole. Tell us about this relationship you had at the age of 21. You're with a man who has very particular ideas about what being a woman means, right?
Yep. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Well, actually, I was in the relationship when I was 17.
17?
Yeah, 17. So, when I was 17, I was with someone who had really strong... he had a really strong idea about how the power status between men and women played a really big part in today's society. I would think that he had a really traditionalistic kind of mindset, but
So in terms of power status, what did that mean? He believed that being a woman meant certain things. Like, can you explain to us, in terms of behavior, what was expected of a woman or femininity?
Okay. Well, to be a woman,
in his eyes, yeah?
Yeah, in his eyes was to be really, demure. You had to be really polite. You cannot speak too loudly. You cannot sit in a certain way that you want, and you have to, you just have to depict the perfect women where you dress appropriately and do things that women do. I was stopped from doing a lot of things. Like for example, I wanted to join talent competition, but I couldn't because he felt that women should not be really out there. And to him, like, women who do that are just maybe attention seeking and stuff. So because of what he views a woman as, every single day I'm questioning myself whether am I a woman today? Like, am I going out of the norm of what a woman should be? Because almost every day I'm being reminded that you're a woman, so you have to, confine to being a woman.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like walking on eggshells, and this guidebook to being a woman exists only in his head.
Yes.
So you have no idea what's expected of you, and how did that impact your sense of self? Somebody listening in might think, oh, being polite and feminine, that doesn't sound terribly bad or wrong. But share with us the example you talked about with me off air when you said you couldn't even address him with a hey.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't actually address him by his name even. I couldn't,
What do you mean? You couldn't use his name?
Yes, I couldn't use his name.
This is your boyfriend, though.
Yes, my boyfriend.
What do you call him?
I have to call him some
With a
sweet, sweet words.
A sweet, affectionate
Yeah.
term.
So if I call him by his name, I'll be like scolded and saying, "I'm sorry. What do you say? What do you say?" And then I will be,
So it sounds like, in terms of the communication pattern, everything was used as an opportunity to put you in your place, so to
Yes.
speak, and to make you wrong.
Yes. Every time I don't fit his idea of a woman, that's it. I'll get scolded or something.
That's the thing with stereotypes, isn't it? It is a very convenient tool for judgment because it makes you wrong if you step outside the boundaries, right? And can you share with me a little bit about how this relationship, this is very interesting because the communication patterns and this power difference that Kokila, you were talking about, we see played out in this relationship. And unfortunately, there was violence in the mix as well.
Yes, there was. Because when I try to step out, at first I would be like thinking, yeah, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm not being a woman. So I try to change myself, but to a certain extent, it gets too, like his anger gets too exaggerated. Like his perception of how a woman should be becomes too controlling. So when I try to kind of retaliate and try to make him understand, it becomes, oh, you're a woman and you don't listen to me. I'm right. I'm the guy. So that power status comes in, and then that's how abuse slowly comes in. And I feel that if you let that happen, it will just get worse. And that's what happened to me.
Right. And now you are an ambassador against dating violence.
Yes.
You're a part of the We Can campaign, and you reach out on a campaign on campus. Tell me about this.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I'm holding a campaign in my university for next year. Yeah, so I'm actually inspired by the Weekend campaign. The Kokila has been really great help to me because I feel that, dating violence hasn't actually, how do I say this? Like, it's not big enough to people, that people they aren't aware of it happening, It's not that easy to tell when dating violence is occurring. So I was hoping that from experience as well, I could reach out to at least people in my school and they can help people they know who they know are going through it as well. So, like, small steps.
Wonderful. Congratulations with that campaign. Very important as well. I mean, I was just looking at the statistics for Aware's Sexual Assault Befriender Service, and more than 80% of cases of women coming forward to seek help, I believe in 2013, the perpetrator was known to the victim. This is sexual assault that we're talking about here. And in case you're wondering what the figures are, in 2013, the Sexual Assault Befriender Service from Aware received 192 calls, and that's an increase of 132 from 2012. We are talking about stereotypes here in Singapore. What sort of common stereotypes women of, all different stripes here in Singapore may be experiencing? Kokila, share with us a little bit about the difference between a stereotype and a generalization. People might think, oh, a stereotype is harmless, but, it can be the root cause of a great deal of harm, as we've just heard. What's the difference between stereotype and a generalization?
Well, I think the difference, it depends on the context, but I think that generalization sounds like a much more benign term, because a stereotype kind of feels like a judgment that then you are not willing to rethink and that you impose. on someone, as opposed to a generalization about a fact that makes it easier to have a discussion about something, right? Like when you have a generalization of, when we say, okay, violence is prevalent in this country or something like that, that's a generalization that then facilitates conversation. It can help to further a discussion as opposed to obstruct it, which is what I think stereotypes often do. And because they tend to be confined and people don't budge from it.
And it's a very useful tool, I think, for control, right?
Yes.
Because then people feel if they step outside the confines of a stereotype, that they are somehow doing something wrong.
Right.
When really it's about being yourself and, who conforms to one set.
Or it's about fighting constantly to not be a stereotype, right? Like when, let's say there are certain expectations of or ideas of what femininity is, and for women to be seen as strong, to constantly not want to look like, say, the stereotype of a bimbo, to not like to reject all things feminine or pink, or for because you're afraid of being stereotyped, and you avoid all of the labels and associations or characteristics of a certain category because you don't want to be stereotyped in a certain way.
I want to bring Anung into this conversation. Anung Hartati, for our listeners who've just tuned in, is a writer from Indonesia. She's published a book about the experiences of domestic workers here in Singapore based on interviews that she conducted with them, or her conversations with them, right, Anung?
Yes.
Can you tell me, how do you think that, there are certain stereotypes people have of domestic worker that you've experienced in your own life?
For me, is for the domestic worker, the no is there must need to good communication with the employer at first, and the second one is if they have a problem with the employer, there are no place can go to for ask for help. And basically from my experiment is after I work from my employer, same employer, because at first time I'm also scared because I don't have work experiment before, and I'm lonely and stressed here. And
okay, I think that's something we can talk about. That I think many people may not be aware that domestic workers who come to Singapore have as much a need for support in community as all of us do, and this feeling of isolation and loneliness can be a very big part of your experience, which may not be addressed because people. Kokila, help me out here. Do you think that people have certain stereotypes of domestic workers in Singapore, given what you know of Anung's experience?
I think in my interaction with Anung and some other domestic workers that we've worked with through We Can, one thing that many of them feel very strongly about is the stereotype that domestic workers are, in their words, seen as stupid, or useless or uneducated and not having a whole multi-dimensional personality, that they're just machines or here to perform this labor and can't have opinions on things. And people are surprised when they tell them that they're stressed. People are surprised when they tell them that they're writers. People are surprised to find out that these people have other dimensions to them apart
even
from
have
their work.
Emotions like loneliness.
That they can feel upset or lonely or crave things like human contact, right? And there's so much of stigmatization.
Do you think that's changing, or these are things that you're still hearing from domestic workers?
I don't feel like much has changed, and I think that especially the stigmatization of domestic workers dating or having sex, I find extremely problematic when it's something that we accept other people in our society do. There is so much of a villainization of domestic workers seeking physical contact, or migrant workers in general seeking any kind of relationship that is personal to them.
And if we looked at you, Anung, not just as a domestic worker, not just as a writer, but as a woman, you mentioned some commonality with what Nicole brought up earlier. You had a boyfriend who also had very, definite ideas about what being a woman was, and that came into conflict with karaoke, right?
Yeah, because at first I thought I already found a good man but in the end I found out that he's not really good, because I work in here to support him to open a small business in the village. And then I found out he's having affair, and that's why everything I did in Singapore, like if I won the competition, I send the prizes, the money to his account, but he like not happy, and then still thought that what I'm doing is.
Was there something
nothing.
about you being,
then-
singing in a karaoke and somebody taking a video of you that somehow he did not
Actually,
approve of?
it's the singing competition.
Oh, okay.
So if I want to end up this relationship because my employer, my mom supports me in everything I do in the positive way.
Hats off to your employer.
But
yeah.
why my boyfriend like that? So that's why I decided to break up with him.
Okay.
Even my mom told me he's not a good guy for you.
All right.
And
We're going to leave it there. Thank you very much. Anung Hartati, my guests Kokila, Annamalai, and Nicole Lawrence. Back in WOW in just a moment. Stay with me.
Add to your Wow Factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.
You're listening to Women of Worth. I'm Michelle Martin. Every week on Women of Worth, we profile stories of individuals who we think can make a difference not only to your life, but I think to anybody listening in. So thank you very much for joining us. Tonight we're understanding a little bit, taking aim at stereotypes, understanding how they can limit the potential of human beings, and also the link between stereotypes and violence. What is that link? Is it tenuous, or is it something that's almost in plain sight that most of us may not pay attention to, but should pay attention to? Because, it could be a valuable sign, for example, to look out for in a relationship. And also, it's definitely a symptom of intolerance, isn't it? A harsh stereotype. So 669113938 if you would like to join the conversation. I say welcome back to my guest, Anung Hartati, who has worked in Singapore for 15 years as a domestic worker. She's working on her second novel in Bahasa, which is titled Becoming Dilista, which is a story of her personal experience, fictionalized. As a writer, she is decorated, won several competitions, published a book, and came to Singapore as a domestic worker, went through a pretty dark period of stress and isolation, and her initial years even drove her to thoughts of suicide. But we're very happy that you're here with us now to share your experience of getting over that and to help other women as well, which is what she does as a volunteer with Home. We're going to hear about her work in a while. Kokila Annamalai is the campaign manager at Aware. I have to hold myself back from calling her Superwoman because she does so much. Thank you very much for joining us, Kokila. And Nicole Lawrence is a third-year undergraduate, sharing with us in the first half of the program about her dating relationship with an individual at the age of 17, and really feeling hemmed in by his expectations of what it means to be a woman in this day and age, and how that restricted everything from how she could comport herself in front of him to even how she could address him. Yeah, she couldn't use his real name. Tell me a little bit about being plus size and whether there are stereotypes associated with body image in Singapore from your perspective, Nicole.
Well, being plus size has never been easier because I've already accepted it now, you see. But being plus size and being in that situation at the same time when I was 17 was really detrimental, because not only do you have thoughts of how people look at you because you're not, thin, you're not slim, you're a size 14. And on top of that, you have someone reminding you that not only do you have to conform to being a woman, but you're not even women enough in that sense because you're not slim, you're not, attractive. And I got reminded a lot as well in that relationship that, if you don't want to be a woman, you can go out, you can try to find someone else who would want you, but nobody would want you because on top of that, you're plus size. So that was really detrimental because, to my self-esteem especially, because and sometimes to some people they don't take it in a positive way if they keep if people keep telling them, oh, you're plus sized, people don't think, okay, I'm gonna lose weight. Some people, they just sink in and then they accept it and everything, like I was speaking about earlier about how it leads to abuse. So if it leads to abuse, then it made me feel like, right, he's right. and slowly I become more accepting of what he says about how I'm plus sized, and that how, I'm not woman enough as well. I'm not there. To him, I'm not at a certain level. So that's how it.
Kokila, can you explain to our listeners a little bit more about that link? You touched on it in the first half of the program, the link between stereotypes and how violence can develop because of this implicit power relationship.
So one of the main stereotypes, I think, in my understanding, that women continue to face in Singapore and around the world have a lot to do with their bodies, like what Nicola said, and not just the appearance of their bodies, but the sexuality of their bodies, right? So many women are, for example, slut-shamed for dressing a certain way, or for choosing to have sexual partners. And this in itself is a form of violence. The isolation that happens, the stigmatization, and the policing, right? So there are women who are perceived to be who are slut-shamed. I also sometimes experience what we call corrective rape, right? Or like, she's such a slut, she deserves to be raped. It is, and stereotypes about women often lead to them not being believed when they are victims of sexual assault and victims of violence. So, stereotypes that women like to lie, women exaggerate, women like to seek attention, so they make false reports. And there's this whole social moral panic about women going around making false allegations of rape, even though it is statistically completely untrue. And we found in a survey that we did in 2012 that many what we call rape myths are still prevalent in Singapore because of the stereotypes about women, right? So stereotypes like women say no when they mean yes, again, leads to violence. Again, some women says, no, I'm not into you. You take that as a yes and then go ahead and assault her. Right?
Let's look a little closer at Nicole's experience, for example. Do you think there's stereotypes associated with women who are in abusive relationships?
Yes. So for one, we have as parallel to Nicole's story, that we've come across a lot of women through the campaign who have, for whom violence in their lives started when their bodies changed and they didn't fit the ideal body image anymore. So, for example, after childbirth, when they put on weight, and then it becomes a lot of verbal and psychological abuse, like this isn't what I signed up for.
Yep.
Nobody else would love you. You're lucky to have me. And when women are in these situations, there are also stereotypes about women who stay in abusive relationships.
We're going to find out what those stereotypes are after this. Stay with us.
Your Wow Factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.
Welcome to Women of Worth. My name is Michelle Martin, and I am joined by three wonderful women in the studio with me today. Anung Hartati, Kokila Annamalai, and Nicole Lawrence, all sharing their experiences and their insight into common stereotypes that women may encounter at any point in their lives, or you may know someone who may encounter these stereotypes. We're going to talk about stereotypes that affect men as well in just a while. But first, I want to pick up on the conversation of, we were talking about the abusive relationship that Nicole experienced when she was 17, and thankfully she managed to survive that. Kokila, share with us some of the stereotypes that society attaches to women who do leave or who don't leave.
So a survey that we did found that 8 in 10 people in Singapore feel that women should stay in violent relationships rather than
That's
leave
shocking.
them. Yes, for reasons such as if they have children or if their partner promises to change. So there is a gendered expectation of women that they keep families together, that they should make sacrifices. And we see women as these sacrificial beings, and this is the image, right, that they should put up with things. And, we hear people telling women all the time, if you keep showing him that you love him, he'll change. That it's the woman's responsibility to somehow change this man. And there's a lot of internalized self-blame that women victims of violence feel because of this. I must have done something wrong. And the idea that, you didn't know, you picked the wrong man. And it's always the responsibility is put on the woman as a victim, right? And the idea that women need to be smart in how they handle men and need to know how to work the man so that the relationship works out and make everything work. But similarly, when women don't leave abusive relationships, people also stereotype them and put them in a box and say, you're too weak. Only weak women would stay and let themselves be abused, and not think about the real dangers.
Nicole, is this something that you faced?
Yeah, I faced it both ways actually. So, when I didn't want to leave, people shun me away and tell me that, it's your choice, you blame yourself that you do this.
You're asking for it. Right?
Yeah, you're asking for it most of the time. And then when you leave, people choose to think that, you couldn't handle a guy, or
So you were in a relationship where a man was, hammering away at your self-esteem. You're feeling the shame about everything, from the way you look to using the wrong word to address him, to dressing the wrong way. But you do manage to survive a period where you're seriously considering suicide, and you do manage to leave. What gave you the strength to do that? Share your experience with us.
Well, it was really hard for me to leave because I had a lot at stake, and all the people around me, my loved ones, were also at risk. So I decided to take that risk. It was a really long consideration, and at the end, I just,
Why were your loved ones at risk?
Because we got threatened and blackmailed a lot because of, like how I get a lot of, if you're going to leave me, then I'm going to destroy you. That's what I heard. So after this long consideration, I just said, okay, you know what? I'll hurt them once and for all, and then no more. At least I won't be hurt after that. So I did. And obviously when I hurt people around me, it would like people stop talking to me. My parents, I upset them a lot. So that's when my suicidal phase kind of came in. But I managed to survive that because after like a week of trying, I finally decided to think about my family and where I actually am standing in life now, which my results and everything, it made me feel that, hey, you have something to look forward to instead. So that's when I picked myself up and I tried to make it up to my family. It was really hard, but it's all worth it. And
it is all worth it.
Really
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Kokila, what are some of these stereotypes that can limit men?
So one of the things that I think works both ways is, so in Singapore, many people still believe that men are the head of the household and should make most of the decisions in the family. And so women also face this situation where they're told, if you don't talk back, then the violence will stop, or if you don't, that you need to be second class in this relationship. But the converse of that is also that there is a lot of pressure on men to be breadwinners, to be aggressive, to be in control, to always be right,
to not show emotions,
and while this mostly works to men's advantage and them being excused in many ways for anger, for aggression, saying, men will be like that, boys will be boys, men can't control their sexual urges, and many of these stereotypes actually work to excuse men from violence. But some of them, especially these expectations of machoism and this hyper masculinity, can affect men who don't fit those stereotypes in very, very severe ways. Like in schools, we see that boys who are seen as being effeminate or are bullied and called sissies or beaten up, and I'll teach you to be a real man. And we've heard stories like that, and where both men and women's and boys and girls' aspirations as individuals are curtailed because of their gender, right? So when at the Arts Fest on the 6th, we screened a film where this little girl just really badly wants to wear a t-shirt, right? And she wants to present herself this way, and it's such a really cute short film about how her mother then throws this t-shirt away because she wants her daughter to wear dresses and wants her to be feminine and girly, and how this girl takes to the streets to go and find that same t-shirt again. And
Wonderful.
It's kind of about that struggle, right, of wanting to define yourself.
And I think that's why I really wanted to do this show. I wanted to hear your stories as defined by you about what you've experienced in life. And I know, Anung, you're very passionate. We've only got about 60 seconds on the clock about hearing other people's stories. And in fact, writing was a way for you to get your story out there. And you work with Home to actually translate the stories of other women, domestic workers, in terms of what they're going through, right? That's you're very passionate about writing. That's helped you?
Yes. Sorry. With writing is my passion. That's why I decided to have the Home to, if maybe a domestic worker they run away and they cannot speak English, so I will translate for them.
Wonderful.
And even midnight I still wake up to, if that girl is really safe and someone pick her up.
Well, you're helping, and I know you're editor of the magazine Suaraku, which so aptly means my voice.
My voice.
So thank you, ladies, for lending your voice to this conversation. Absolutely wonderful having all three of you here. We were talking about stereotypes, the link between stereotypes and violence. My thanks to Anung Hartati, Kokila, Annamalai, and Nicole Lawrence for being on Women of Worth. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Add to your wow factor with Michelle Martin in the Wow Club on 938 Live.